Okay, so let's talk about the set-asides, the dollars, etc. And I'll try to track my time. If I have time, I'm going to show you USA Spending, where I get this data from. And it's also where you can go in to learn more about the data and drive into the agencies that might align more with what you're trying to do. But I wanted to start off with this term gaslighting, because it's like one of my 400 videos, over 400 videos and these trainings that I've done. And this is like one of the first times I've wondered if that word was like, whether it should be in there or not. But gaslighting is this term that comes from domestic violence. And some people tend to make it a political thing or something. But gaslighting, the whole idea of it is making me think something, basically making me think I'm crazy about something I'm seeing. And this is what is happening with, in my opinion, women-owned small business numbers that the government puts out. They're like, oh, we spent $28 billion with women-owned small businesses. And I say, no, I say you're trying to make me feel like you're doing such a good job with women-owned small businesses. But the reality is, women-owned small businesses, for set-asides, they had less than $1 billion in the entire federal government set aside to them. Less than $1 billion. Yet the government claims that, $28 billion went there. And so you understand the facts. Women-owned small businesses did win $28+ billion in 2022, but they did it because of their own efforts. They did it despite the government not doing set-asides. The whole point of the small business program and a 5% goal for women-owned small businesses is to, set aside 5% of the dollars, not to luckily let it happen with women-owned small businesses who are pushing through on 8A certifications or SDVO or total small, or even women-owned small businesses who compete full and open. That's their effort, not the government's effort, that got those dollars. And so I really want you to pay attention to this, because this is going to go into this idea of thinking about, where are all the set-asides? How come I don't see set-asides? So in 2022, there was $680 billion spent, but only $1 billion of it was set aside to women-owned small businesses. And you can see right here on my screen, that was 2,000 contracts, basically. And a lot more contracts happened in 2023, which is an interesting thing. I have a little, not a little, I have a big number problem there. When you can see in FY 2023, $1 billion was set aside. Ignore that $4 billion, that's a mistake. But $745 billion is how much the government spent, and only $1 billion of it went to women-owned set-asides. So they almost doubled the amount of contracts and did not really move the dollar volume at all, the dollar amount at all, right? And so they claimed that they did $27 billion that went to women-owned small businesses. And these are the type of things that are odd to me, right? The budget that they spent went up significantly, but not women-owned small businesses portion. That actually went down. It's like, how does it go down when the overall spending is going up? And it's, to me, again, this idea that they're not tracking it. They don't care. And by the way, the reason I'm saying all this is I'm not trying to complain about it. I'm certainly pointing out what I don't like, but I'm not complaining about it. What I'm trying to say is we need to change our approach to go get the dollars, because they're sure not going to give it to us. But you can get the dollars for sure. So here is sole sources. I just wanted to quickly put it in. Women-owned small businesses don't get sole sources, but I figured I'd show you. In 22, there was 105 million, 130 million, but less than 500, right around 400 contracts in 2022 and 2023. What this just tells you is ignore sole source. If it happens, it's a complete anomaly. You might as well buy a lottery ticket, right? And so for the women-owned small business program, you really want to be tracking on the set-asides. And here I've got the two different data sets side by side so you can see it. But in here, you can tell the difference. In 22, 800 million going to set aside, but only 100 million going to sole source. And the same thing with FY23, 1 billion going to set aside and 130 million going to sole source. So know the numbers, right? Understand the difference in there. So let's go ahead and look at the agencies who favor women-owned small businesses. And if you look at no other slide that I present, I really think this is the slide to pay attention to, because it tells you the agencies in FY 2022 and 2023, so the last two fiscal years, it tells us which agencies, through their actions, more than words, are love women-owned small businesses. And the way I define that they love us is they put a set-aside towards it. By the way, when I say us, I don't have a woman-owned small business, but I'm just one of you today. But look at the amounts coming through, and you start seeing this trend. Army is heads and shoulders above anybody else, right? So if you look at 2023 and 2022, they're right around 200 million. And the next closest one is the Air Force in 23. And remember that budget went up. So there was this increase in spending, which is good. But the Air Force is half of what the Army is, less than half. And same thing with the Navy, the Air Force and the Navy. But when you look at this, one of the first things you should see is that the Army, Navy, and Air Force in 2022 and 2023, they sit there at the top, these three agencies. And so if I was a woman-owned small business, I would be looking at DoD. And by the way, you don't have to look at prime contracts immediately. If you see this, you might set up a 2-year strategy to try to get subcontracts, begin to get experience in the Army, Navy, or Air Force. And then as you move forward, you're able to then go after prime contracts, but you've put yourself in to the Department of Defense if you haven't got there already. But now you're putting yourself into the top 3 agencies or the one major Department of Defense that clearly loves using women-owned small businesses. They clearly make a commitment through set-asides to work with women-owned small businesses. The other one that sits at the top is NOAA. You can see them in position 4 for 22 and in position 5 for 2023. In both years, they're 50 million plus, right? And that's a good spend. NOAA is under Department of Commerce, so it's showing, putting commerce right up the top there. And then as you come down, I'm gonna let you look at 22, but I'll talk about 2023. NIH is part of HHS, right? This is a big deal because when you look at the top 10, there's nobody else in HHS. And so that's something to track on. I'll show you something different with sole source. But right here, this tells me that if I'm a woman-owned small business inside of HHS, then I should be looking towards and talking to NIH. And by the way, 65 million is nothing. It is a complete drop in the hat. I wish I had time to show you like what the 8A small businesses get, et cetera. But this money is spread across many, many agencies. And so 65 million, if I looked at that, it's probably not representing a lot of contracts at NIH, but it does show you that they do set-asides and you want to get in there. So the next one is USAID. And then coming back to number 7 is DoD. These ones drop pretty significantly. So DISA is the Defense Information Security Agency or Administration or whatever, or Services Administration, I think. But they're 33 million, right? That's a drop in the bucket compared to the Navy, let alone the Army. And so when I look at these things, I'm really trying to align where are they spending with my designation. You would want to do, by the way, this exact same thing if you have a contract vehicle. Which agencies love my contract vehicle? If you have a NAICS code, right? Which agencies love my NAICS code? We have a customer that does additive manufacturing, and we thought this one agency would love it. And it turns out they love it so much that they actually do it themselves, and they're a bad agency target for us. And so that's fine. By learning that, you redirect your energy to go where you're needed or where you're wanted. And it's the same thing here as you start looking down, right? So of the FY2023 agencies that are in the top 10, I think it's 5 of them: Army, Air Force, Navy, DISA, and DLA. So 5 of them are in DoD. This is an important thing to remember, because if some of them, if they really love women-owned small businesses in DoD, then your ability to get in, find set-asides, build past performances that build on each other, it's a very real activity for you. So this next slide, I just wanted to flip it over a little bit on the direct awards, right? I said there was not a lot, but you can see the same thing. I actually don't even want to spend a lot of time because it's just token amount of dollars that's being spent. But if you look in, it's just spread across a lot of different agencies, except for the Army. Everybody's doing 5 or 10 million. You can come back and look at this in the replay, but I want to come here because I can save some time and go over and show you how I get this data. But I did want to show you for the women-owned small businesses, what are the top NAICS that are being that have set-asides for their requirements, right? And so these are pretty good. If you look at it, depending on what business you're in, if you look at the first one and really the first one, the second one, the fourth one, and the 6th one are all basically IT services. You could argue the third one is too, but let's leave that one out. But other computer-related services, it's kind of a catch-all bucket, right? It's these NAICS codes are really not that helpful because it covers everything. But it is pretty clear that it's a catch-all for IT services, and they're doing 186 million in there. So if you're in the IT space, this is great. This 541330, I would submit most of it is probably coming from the Navy if I filtered it down, because the Navy has Seaport Next Gen. They use 541330 on that contract vehicle, and IT work comes through there. So the chances of that being in there is still IT there. And then you get into administrative management and support services around the office activity, 100 million in there. So when you start looking at USA spending, which I'll show you in a second, I want you to think about what is your NAICS code. You could also try the same thing with keywords. It's a little harder, but what's your NAICS code? And then see which agencies are tracking on what you sell.